I'm Yann Martel, the author of Life of Pi, The High Mountains of Portugal, and Self, and I'm delighted to be a judge for the next big story from the Novelry. Does every story need to revolve around some sort of problem? Well, yes. You can have an 800-page novel in which absolutely nothing happens because your voice is so amazing and your style is so amazing, but that's a rare feat to achieve and not necessarily one you want to do every second day. So usually a story will revolve around some issue. So Moby Dick revolves around this big white whale that Captain Ahab is obsessed about. The Outsider by Camus starts with the death of the character's mother. Usually a story is revolve around some issue that is the catalyst for further action to which there's eventually some kind of outcome. A classic one would be genre fiction. A murder mystery usually ends with the resolution of who did it. You don't all have to have that. There are some clever ones where you never find out. But usually, there's a murder and you find out who done it. A romance, usually, the boy gets the girl gets the boy, the girl gets the girl, the boy gets the boy. Usually there's some sort of romantic denouement that is possibly satisfying. But there has to be a problem to start with. There has to be a challenge, something that needs accomplishing. And the story is all about that, how it's resolved. Whether successfully or not, happily or not, that's not the issue, but there has to be some sort of mountain to climb. The problem in a story doesn't have to be life and death. Little Red Riding Hood, she just has to deliver a basket of food to her grandmother. It's a completely trivial, mundane task, but rich in adventure nonetheless. There are wolves out there, and it's also highly symbolic. So it's not a question of high action, high stake necessarily. It's just how it resonates with the reader. It has to speak to the reader somehow. So it's not always a question of frenetic action and multiple murders and explosions. That, in fact, gets quite tiresome. How many James Bond movies can you watch in a row without, I've had enough here. Same thing with any kind of story. You want variety, including the quieter ones, which revolve around emotional subtleties. But nonetheless, those have to be announced relatively early on. It'd be surprising to read a novel that goes on for 150 pages in a very subtle mode and suddenly have, explosions and mass murder and zombies. Usually it's announced fairly quickly, but it doesn't have to be major stakes. There just has to be a stake of some sort. The kinds of problems that a story might be about range from, boy meets girl, boy wants girl, but girl is inaccessible, Romeo and Juliet. It could be financial, Grapes of Wrath. Family's very poor, they have to move, they have to seek their fortune somewhere else. So an immigration kind of story where you move. Life of Pi in a sense is like that. It could be, a more plot-driven one would be like an action one where there's an evil conspiracy to take over the world and Agent James Bond 007 needs to somehow beat the bad guys. There's coming-of-age stories. You're immature, you make mistakes, you grow from them. There's so many possible premises and solutions. That's what's wonderful about stories, is they are literally infinite. There are more stories than there are people on this planet.